Hey everybody, welcome back to Hope is Not a Plan, the podcast where we discuss ambitious projects and see what went right, what went wrong, and how a healthy dose of pragmatism can fuel success. Today, we're tracking a project that aimed to change the world, literally. We're talking about the iconic charity single, We Are the World, and the Herculean task of bringing together some of music's biggest egos for one history-making night. Welcome to the Hope is Not a Plan podcast, where we address tough questions head on, face our problems, and highlight our hopes by providing actionable planning steps to improve ourselves, mind, body, and spirit. Now, let's get logged in and get locked on to this episode of the Hope is Not a Plan podcast. This episode is inspired by the documentary The Greatest Night in Pop that I recently watched on Netflix. As I sat there in awe of the musical powerhouses involved in making the song, I quickly realized I was watching a masterclass in project management and relationship building. So, in this episode, I'm going to share my observations as a project manager and leader of project managers on how I believe we can all benefit from the lessons shared in The Greatest Night in Pop. Part 1, the architects, Lionel Richie and Michael Jackson. So this story starts not with a producer, but with two songwriters, two pretty well-known songwriters, Lionel Richie and Michael Jackson. They were tasked with a monumental challenge: create a song that would resonate with a global audience that transcended language and cultural barriers. That sounds like maybe some of the objectives and the guidance we get for big projects. Here's where the effective project management, though, kicks in. So Lionel Richie and Michael Jackson, who are our subject matter experts, knew their strengths. They kept the song focused and clear call to action in a universally appealing method. So these two folks, they knew they would go back and forth and riff, and as you watch this, someone would ha ha ha, and they were trying to get to that well-known "We Are the World," right, song and rhythm, and they would just share ideas. They weren't in silos. They didn't let their egos get in the way, and they provided the foundation for the entire project. So imagine trying to wrangle dozens of artists and diverse styles, right, with a tightly focused song with a simple yet powerful message. And this is what became the North Star. So this, when we think about, if you remember the episode where I talked about those foundational 5 things of planning, we have leader's intent, we have objectives, we have some sort of organizational structure, we have resources, and we have communication. And so this acts as our intent. The intent came from Harry Belafonte, right, who wanted to raise money. Famine in Africa was rampant. And so part of the intent is we need to do something. We have the power, we have the exposure, we have the stars. This was also, FYI, in 1984 on the same night as the American Music Awards. And I won't give away a lot of the documentary, but let's just say going from one big event that all these people were involved in to another one is like being within a program with several projects trying to coordinate all these different people. And now Lionel Richie and Michael Jackson have shared this foundational idea, this business case, if you will, based on Harry Belafonte's leader's intent of wanting to do something and say, okay, well, here's how we think we can do it. Well, in the early intake period of a project, it's almost the same thing. I have an idea because I see a problem. And then some folks can think, well, how about this? Whether it's a vendor or your company, we have our business case and we're going to start moving toward a project, and we need a project manager. Enter Quincy Jones, the mastermind conductor of this musical orchestra. He understood the deadline and one night to record with all these massive artists, right? And to get it in, as quickly as possible with the highest quality. You could say he was hitting the big 4, right? We need to do this on budget. FYI, there wasn't one. This was all volunteer time for everyone involved, on schedule, one night that includes doing the American Music Awards and coming to this secret recording place, which we'll get into here in a little bit. In scope, right? We're not going to go crazy and let everybody add their own thing. In fact, he put a sign up above the door that said, leave your ego at the door, or check your ego at the door. Brilliant. And then quality. This has to be high quality, right? This is a song that's going to be played around the world, and we want to raise money to feed people that are starving to death in Africa. His challenges included keeping everyone focused and efficient, right? The biggest stars in pop and in music that day. So everybody wants to get there and talk and chat, and that's awesome, and they did. But he had to keep them focused. Egos, as you might imagine, could have easily derailed the whole project, right? So on a practical note, Quincy Jones was a genius when Michael Jackson and Lionel Richie had put together a demo, that he sent it off to all the different artists so they could hear it, learn their parts, their assignments, know what they had to do. And he color coded it. So it was very obvious, right? I'm blue, you're green, so-and-so is yellow, Cyndi Lauper, Huey Lewis, whomever. So it was clear what was in their scope, what their tasks were that they owned, right? And that's part of our core skill as our project manager is, do people clearly know what their job is? Do they know how their job affects other people's job, where they go? And I've said this and I've heard this, as clear as we believe we've communicated something, we haven't. So we always need to check in with our team and see if they understand the work that they are assigned to do. They're part of the project, what they're doing. And Jones, both in reality and then highlighted in this documentary, did that brilliantly. Most importantly, that wasn't just about the high notes or get everything perfect or vocal acrobatics for a particular artist. It was all tied back to the leader's intent of serving the song and its message to feed people that were starving in Africa. So everything Quincy Jones did, when you see him intervene with an artist individually or set up the room in a certain way, it all connects to the leader's intent of providing a solution from Harry Belafonte to starving kids in Africa. And it ties to the objectives of, okay, we're going to use this song to raise money. We're going to, in one night, record one of the greatest songs in history to raise money. So now, what do we do with all these artists? These artists are resources, right? And the casting for the project was genius. Joan recognized the talent pool that he had. I mean, he had the biggest names from the past decades and current times in the mid 80s, and meticulously assigned roles, right? He assigned roles on purpose based on their skill set, and that's what we need to do when we're managing resources, when we're working with resource managers, to say, here's a problem we need to solve. How can you or someone from your team help us solve it? And then have them tell us what their skill set is, and also kind of make sure that they fit. So it wasn't just popularity either. It was matching the artist's strengths in the songs to different sections, like Stevie Wonder on harmonica, having Bruce Springsteen sing a gravelly soul area. Diana Summer, we need the high pitch kind of melody. Like all these matches of people was great. So that every artist, just like every member of our team, becomes a key piece of the puzzle and can share their unique, in this case, voice, but maybe computer coding skill set or knowledge of architecture, whatever the skill is on whatever project, but it contributes to the overall, in this case, song's impact, but in the project management world, to the project success. So we've built our business case and we have the outline of what we want to do from Lionel Richie and Michael Jackson. Harry Belafonte has given his leader's intent of raising money and awareness for starving children and people in Africa. We brought in a crack project manager in Quincy Jones to bring all these people in different skill sets and egos and resources together. We've assigned them the best way possible to support this mission. And now we've got a little bit of risk management. Here's the thing. The project was a gamble on a grand scale. Many projects are, right? We think, hey, we're going to do this thing and we have this much money and we hope it goes well, but hope is not a plan, folks, right? So in this case, recording a song with such a large cast, it had never been done before, let alone one night, right? Studios weren't equipped for it. Potential logistical nightmares loomed large. Does that sound familiar, project managers? Logistical nightmares. So the solution? Bring in our project manager, Jones. He decided to record the music and film the video simultaneously. Talk about risky, right? But it paid off in spades. It streamlined the process. So this is where we look at our risk and we say, you know what? We accept that risk because the payoff is going to be worth the hazards of the sound from the video people getting in the way of the actual recording, and then maybe the folks on camera not looking well in the lighting, and we're getting hot because we've been here for hours and all this kind of stuff. But it streamlined the process by eliminating the need for multiple sessions, which wasn't an option, right? Our scope was one night, and it captured the magic of all these artists coming together in real time, the raw emotion, the frustration, that you can see when you watch The Greatest Night in Pop. It's just, it's amazing to see people getting along, people butting heads, but knowing it's a risk even to put all these people together, right? You know, people in your organization, imagine a project is greenlit and you're going to bring all these folks together, or there's a big change that's part of this project, and that's a risk. Some people aren't going to accept that change, from leadership on down to boots on the ground. And the greatest night in pop, the raw emotion and energy, it amplified the song's message, right? And it created a powerful visual accompaniment. And so for you as project managers, or even if you have a program, but look at the risk that you have. See what you want to accept, what you can mitigate by combining, people's parts. Or do you have to transfer this risk and say, no, we can't do this. This has to be part of another project. Or do you avoid it by not doing something? Just look at all the different risk management strategies, just like Quincy Jones did, and saying, we do accept this. Let's do it all at the same time. We can get it done. We have the right people. We're confident. We're going to accept this risk and plan for it and mitigate it by putting the right people in place, by being quiet when we record, by paying attention to the environment. All the things that we do to manage risks as project managers. So we have our architecture, right? We have our Conductor and Quincy Jones, resource allocation. We're managing risk. Now, communication, right? Which for me is foundation 5. And there's foundational things of leaders' intent, objectives, organization, resources, and communication. This whole project was shrouded in secrecy. The artists were flown there under false pretenses in some cases, and they only learned what was really happening that night when they got there, right? They had an inkling of, hey, here's this sample song. Come to the show. Hey, after the American Music Awards, check it out. But it was crucial to be secret. And this is where information management out before a project, during a project, after can have sensitivities, right? Between different vendors, between us and other organizations for a few reasons. But first, for this, in this case, the secrecy was important because it prevented leaks, right? And ensured that there could be a coordinated global release, which is a thing that we'll talk about here in a bit. So imagine that there were leaks, and there were, to some extent, that, hey, all these biggest names in pop are going to show up after the awards. I mean, they would be flooded, the press would be everywhere, and there were some there, but they really mitigated that by keeping it secret, by asking the artists not to talk about it. The artists were interviewed, and the press asked them about it right after the award show. They're like, oh, and they just either played it off or said, I can't really talk about that. But it was vital to the impact too, because it kind of made it more special, right? It adds a little hype. You got to have a hype, kind of feel to your project to get people excited. And second, it kept everybody focused on the mission at hand, right? Go enjoy the American Music Awards, get your awards if you do, and then recognize that right after this, we're going to do something really special. There's no distractions. No one's jockeying for position or individual glory when it's not out there for the world to see yet. The only people that truly know what's happening are the artists and the producers and the volunteer sound and video people. So everyone from the superstar singers to the studio technicians understood the importance of flawless communication, and they followed their project manager, Quincy Jones's lead. That is a key thing for us as project managers when we do a communications plan. Is this in line with how we can all communicate? Does the methodology I'm suggesting to be reviewed by the team and the business owner and then approved by the sponsor, does it make sense? Are we using Zoom? Are we using Teams? Are we messaging somehow? Is email good enough? Are we going to have daily stand-up calls? What's the tempo and how does it fit? Is there stuff we can't talk about with this group, but we can with this other group? And then we can hint to it with the whole team. And that's part of information management within project management. There is some secrecy involved in that. So we have to remember communication. So part 6, stakeholder management. And this got pretty dicey, and it gets dicey in project management in the real world. And for sure, in the greatest night in pop, they highlight that. And let's be honest, on projects, let alone as we see in the documentary, not everyone is happy. In the greatest night in pop, they showed that some artists, potential stakeholders, if you will, were left out. They were there maybe to influence other folks. Prince refused to participate, right? And there were others that felt slighted, and I won't spoiler alert the whole thing, but some folks left because it was taking a long time. They were off track a little bit, just like projects. They were in the messy middle, a couple hour, like a project, but they were a couple hours into recording and who's doing what and how do we fit in. And some folks left because they either didn't get a part that they thought they were going to have, or it was taking too long and it was hot. And they were like, I don't do this kind of thing. I'm not singing high notes and gravelly low notes and this and that. And they were kind of lost. But including everybody wouldn't have worked. Right? So sometimes people need to not be on your project because it's not best for them. It's not best for you, best for the team, best for the organization. But think about trying to record a globally impactful song like this. A cast of thousands would be unwieldy and difficult to impossible to manage. So, in this instance, Quincy Jones focused on the talent needed to deliver the song's message effectively, right? So he had to manage the stakeholders, the people that were there still, that had the skills that he knew could impact in the certain parts of the song. And if you haven't listened to the song, go listen to it. You'll hear the different voices. Watch this documentary. You'll realize, wow, the placement of them, of these resources, of these team members was genius. It wasn't creating a popularity contest. It was about assembling a team with the right voices and the right skills to create the powerful tool for change that We Are the World was and is. And so as a project manager, think about that. I need to help put folks in the right place at the right time. And some folks need a little more help. Some folks, I need to talk to them and then talk to them and their manager, and then maybe they're not the right fit. Whatever that is, that's part of being a project manager. And part of the challenge of stakeholder management is being objective to the point where someone may be super nice, but they're impacting your project negatively. They're slowing it down. They're pulling other people down. And that has to be addressed. What you allow in your presence, you promote. And as a project manager, you've got to do your best to promote the best for the people, for the project. I'm in healthcare, for the patients eventually that use this. So it's very important. And Quincy Jones did that, and others did it. Lionel Richie stepped in. There were moments where they stepped in and helped redirect one of the artists that was having a problem with one of the big parts that comes up at the end, because this wasn't how he sounded usually and what he did. And so they had to talk to him and say, no, let's do this. And in fact, let's pair you up with this other artist that can help you get a better perspective. So think about that too as a project manager, or if you're a manager of project managers and a leader of a program, think about other people on your team that can help the person that's having challenges, maybe better than you can as an official manager. A lot of people like to be influenced or are influenced more efficiently by their peer, by their teammate. And both Quincy Jones and Lionel Richie did this. They saw this artist was struggling. Again, I'll let you find out when you watch. And they said, you know what, come with us and work with this other person. And they went through a few steps of how it should sound. And then the artist was good to go. But they needed that redirect. They needed that reassurance that it's okay. Like, you don't have to have this perfect. Let's go practice. And it was one of the greatest stakeholder management or leadership or human connections that I've seen in a long, long time. And that's something that I strive for, and I would encourage all of you to strive for when you're leading projects, is people over process, relationships over process, right? If we don't have good relationships, if we're not taking care of our people, nothing else is going to work. This technical stuff in projects, or, whatever is technical in your field, that's not hard relative to human stuff, emotions, connections, guidance, etc. The legacy of We Are the World was enormous, right? It was a global phenomenon. It raised millions for famine relief. To me, it's a huge testament to focused leadership, clear communication, leveraging individual strengths. It's a reminder that sometimes the most ambitious projects can be achieved by putting hope to a well-defined plan. And that's what Michael Jackson, Lionel Richie, Harry Belafonte, Quincy Jones, the orchestrator or the project manager, did. And all the participants. As perspective, We Are the World raised $80 million then. Now, in 2024, this was in the 80s and mid-80s, 84. Now that's equivalent to $214 million for famine relief. The documentary, The Greatest Night in Pop, shows to me, and I believe it will for you, how good team leadership and process facilitation can truly change the world. We Are the World changed the world literally, globally. It fed people in Africa. You can change your world with the same thing by leading your teams well, by letting your teams lead themselves, by keeping people to a good process that fits the current situation, not just because it's a process. More importantly, the people for We Are the World were involved and invested. And the project leaders could have said, well, fine, don't be part of this. But they value those relationships. And that's a huge component. It's a vital component of this project, of any project you're going to be on. Because without strong relationships within the team and amongst the stakeholders, the process and the plans will fail. Thank God all involved with We Are the World were focused and committed, and they volunteered their time. which is, I think, huge because these folks were super popular. A lot of them were on tour and they didn't have to do it. And your project teams, similarly, I did a podcast episode years ago called Your Conscripts on your project teams, right? Not everybody asked to be there, or not everybody knows why they're there. You've heard of the term voluntold. So as us as project managers, let's keep folks involved in influence and manage them. And so again, the great examples from The Greatest Night in Pop and that led to We Are the World, you have to have a good business plan, a good direction and leader's intent. And the architects of that, Lionel Richie and Michael Jackson, did so with the base of the plan based off Harry Belafonte's idea and inspiration from Bob Geldof, right, where he had done Live Aid. And then you got to get a good project manager to help bring everybody together, or if you have a program manager. And Quincy Jones did that like a champion. You got to put the artists in the right place, the artists on your team, the artists for this song, resource allocation. You got to manage the risks as you're planning. Some things you're not going to feel comfortable with, but you know it's the right thing to do, so you got to do it. Communication, man, that is key, right? You've got to communicate strong in many different ways and many times. Got to manage your stakeholders. Not everybody's going to be a good fit, but we have to figure out how to help them fit together. And then look at the legacy that your project's going to leave, like We Are the World has. Where is the output of this? Who's it going to help? How's it going to make a difference? And try and keep that to your forefront when you're frustrated with some technical problem in the back room or wherever you are. I thank you for being here on the Hope Is Not a Plan podcast. Please go to hopesnotaplan.com, and there are more resources, the write-ups for these, the transcripts. You can follow the show on Apple, Spotify, anywhere your podcasts are. Please leave a review. That'd be great. Let me know how I'm doing. And follow me on the social media at Hope's Not a Plan on both Twitter and Instagram. I have a Facebook page, Hope Is Not a Plan. You may recognize the branding's a little different. So I'm being dynamic and agile. As I understand, sometimes there's a need to change even early in a project. So I thank you all for being here and sticking with me and giving me feedback. And go to hopesnotaplan.com and ask me a question and give me feedback on something else you'd like to hear about, or another example of good leadership you've seen in art or a book or something else. Let's share knowledge together on this platform. Remember, everybody, stay safe out there. Wash those hands. And I wish you all Godspeed.